and welcome to episode 1 of Famous Scottish Figures and Events. So if you haven't already seen the intro, this is a new series I'm starting on this channel where I go over famous historical events and figures in Scottish history. This first episode is going to be looking at King Alexander III, a man who once ruled the country in the 13th century. However, his untimely demise led to some very important matters in Scotland that will be discussed later on in this series. However, before we get started, make sure to subscribe to my channel and ring the bells so that you can be reminded on when a new episode is released. Now that is done, let's get on with this episode. Alexander III was born on the 4th of September 1241 in Roxburgh in the Scottish borders. His mother was Marie de Coucy, and his father was Alexander II, hence why their son got the name Alexander III, as he was the next person who was the heir to the throne. Unlike today's children, Alexander III did not have a normal childhood. After the demise of his father in 1249, he was crowned King of Scotland at the age of 7 on July 13, 1249. This made Alexander III one of the youngest kings in the history of Scotland. Around 3 years after his coronation, he married Henry III of England's daughter Margaret when he was 10. Alexander and Margaret had 3 children together between 1261 and 1272. 2 sons, Alexander and David, and daughter Margaret, who would later go on to marry Eric II, the King of Norway. King Alexander III was King of Scotland from 1249 until 1285, a period of 36 years, which for a monarch is a lifetime. One important event that King Alexander III is known for is the Cutie of Perth, which was signed in July of 1266. There was a 25-year dispute between Norway and Scotland over who controlled the Isle of Man and the Western Isles, also known as the Hebrides. 3 years prior to this treaty being signed, the Battle of Largs took place between the two countries in the Firth of Forth River. The Norwegian army was led by King Haakon IV, and the Scottish army was led by King Alexander III. Even though Scotland regained control of most of the islands after the Treaty of Perth, Norway still had control of Orkney and Shetland until 1469. Probably one of the things that Alexander III is best known for is his untimely death in March 1286 in Fife. At this time, Alexander had married another lady. Her name was Yolanda, Margaret having died in 1275. Weather conditions on this day were not the best. It was very rainy, and despite warnings, Alexander travelled to meet Queen Yolanda that night, and famously fell off his horse and was killed. The king's body was found on the beach the next day, and it was assumed that he had broken his neck. The king's death left Scotland with a lot of problems, as well as being the catalyst for some very famous wars that will be covered later on in this series. The main problem was that there was no one left to rule the country. All 3 of his children had unfortunately passed away before him, leaving the heir to the throne as his 3-year-old Norwegian granddaughter, who will also be discussed later on in this series. The celebrated King Alexander III of Scotland is remembered in Scotland and also taught about in the school curriculum. There is a statue in between the Scottish towns of Untitled and Duncan, so we'll be sure to keep an eye out for it during your travels in Fife. Alexander's remains are now buried at Dunfermline Abbey, so if you go there, try to find him. I really hope you enjoyed the first episode of famous Scottish figures and events. I have really enjoyed researching this episode and recording it for you to learn some interesting things. Be sure to tune in to the second episode of this series in 2 weeks, where I will be discussing some famous Scottish inventors. I will see you all very soon. Bye!